preparing before you go, which is kind of encompassing a lot of this stuff together, because that's exactly what the Blue Angels are doing at a conference room table. Is they are preparing well before they get into the plane to take off and do this. And in business, we see a lot of people just get out there and wing it, even if they have a process, even if they have all these things. And then they're like, oh wait, I forgot my open house signs.
One of my favorite sayings that I learned was, don't ever practice on the client.
Welcome everyone to Life at 10 Tenths, where we inspire you to live at the pinnacle of your ability and purpose. My name is Matt Pinelli, joined by my great friend Garrett Fry, and we have an incredible episode for you today. And if you are listening on an audio platform, you're going to want to hop over to YouTube at some point, because we're going to try to clip in a little video here that's going to help set up kind of the conversation that we're going to have here today. And at the very least, there's going to be a link in the show notes for you to go watch that on YouTube, which for show notes, by the way, you get kind of what we can put into the audio platform here. If you want more detail on those show notes, you can download our app, the Life at 10 Tenths app, for free, and you can create a free account and you can get access to all of our episodes, the show notes. You can even comment on the episodes, which we'll be able to see, which we would love to hear what you guys think about each individual episode. But you can also go do that on YouTube as well. So don't be afraid to go over on YouTube and do that. We appreciate having you guys in our world. And let's get right into this, Garrett. I'm pumped to talk about this. We've been kind of talking about this for a little over a week now, and this video of the Blue Angels, and I'm just like, I'm loving every little minute of it. So
what's fun with this, Matt, is you brought this to me, but I had already seen it. I had already watched it, and I had this, like, I was fascinated by the processes that were going on in this video. And then you're like, dude, have you seen this? And I was like, oh, yeah, I have. And then, so we Matt and I got into a really big conversation about this, about, you know, how this actually all transfers over into anything that you're doing professionally in your world, anything you want to be a professional at, anything you want to be running at the best level you possibly can. So I want to give you a couple takeaways that you're going to get out of this episode today, and things I want you paying attention to, things I want you listening for. And we got 5 things that Matt and I really started to focus on. Like, these are the most powerful things you can take out of this episode today. One is the power of teamwork and also the trust in your team. 2, focused incremental visualization. We're going to talk about that today. 3, trust in a process, or trust in the process that you've set up. Number 4, preparing before you go. And number 5, practicing and taking action to reduce the point of failure to absolutely 0. And so these are the things we want you listening for today. These are the takeaways that you will get out of this episode today. We are 100% sure of that. And Matt, let's just go to watching this. So again, if you've now taken the time to watch the video, to see what we've got, what this whole process of the Blue Angels is, how they go about this, watching this video, Matt, is one of the most fascinating things, because the level of focus, the level of intention, the level of preparedness and professionalism that you watch these pilots go through, in a weird way, if you saw it and you didn't know what you were watching, you'd be like, it's almost comical. It's like, what is going on here? Like, what is happening? And then you realize that they are literally living through an experience that isn't happening yet,
which is so cool. And something we've talked about a lot, and we see even a lot of professional athletes talk about. And, you know, like, whether it's, and I did this when I used to ski race when I was a kid, is you'd go look at the course and then you would try to visualize yourself skiing down the course, and watching these pilots, like, not only do it individually, but together is a whole nother level. And what I'm also excited to talk about today is, how do you stack up to that? Because we get to see this elite product of visualization, but there's levels to that. Like, from a plane standpoint, there's how they're doing, and we're going to highlight some really cool things. You actually noticed something that I didn't notice with how they look, where their heads turn with their eyes closed, which is so cool.
Yeah.
But there's also visualizing how do I even just turn a plane on and go through all the right checks, go through all the checks before I turn a plane on, and visualizing that over and over and over and over again, practicing until I don't get it wrong. And these are the things that a lot of times we try to just shoot right up to elite level of the process or whatever that we're focused on, instead of starting with where are we at today and how do we just visualize the next step? Because if we get that right, then it's going to be a lot easier to get the next step right, and then so on and so on and so on.
So let's pick apart these one by one. At the what I set up here at the start of this. Let's kind of pick these apart. So let's just talk about the power of teamwork and trust in your team. Like we watched this in the video where we were talking about like looking over at their at their team, and the first thing I started to think about was the amount of trust, because the lead plane, from what I can tell, is the eyes of where they're going. Like that is I have the vision. Think about this in your structure of your team. Think about this, the structure of your business. Think of the structure of your family units and things like that. Whoever's the leader, whoever's the one with the visionary that's like, I'm going this direction. You have to have a team with you that isn't having to look at the horizon or where we're going. They need to know where we're going. But at the end of the day, they're not worried about that. They're just worried about where the wingtip is next to them. They're just worried about where the number on that plane is next to them. Because if you watch in the video, you've got the main lead guy, hand on the stick, hand on the throttle, head looking forward. And then you see other guys sitting in the room with their head completely turned to the side. And they've got their hand on the stick and the hand on the throttle. And you're watching them as he's calling out, making little noises and different shifts. And it was kind of interesting to hear how he talked about it. They're all working together at exactly the same time to cause the results that they all want to get to. But the level of trust, I can't imagine flying a plane that fast. And every bit of us, every one of us goes, oh, you would want to be looking out the front of the plane, right? Oh no, this guy over here, he's going, I don't care about this because I trust my lead. I'm just watching his wing. Oh, talk about trust.
Oh, man. I think when you pointed that out to me, you're like, wait, did you see the guy who's just looking to the right? And I'm like, that's incredible when you think about it. And a lot of times, and many of you who are listening might be in that leadership position. Yeah. And here's the other thing. The leader's not looking back at everybody else to make sure that they're following in the right spot too, right? He's looking ahead saying, I got to do this. And he knows that there is a team and a system and a plan that they're following to get there. And we see this with a lot of agents. They hire team members, or maybe they're on a team, and the trust level isn't there because there's a system breakdown. Yep. And there's micromanaging going on, and everybody's trying to look at what everybody else is doing and all do the same thing at the same time. When that doesn't create progress, it creates confusion. Yeah. And so that is, and I think there's a lot that's born into trust, but also you have to think about just knowing, right? Believing in those teams and believing that, hey, we brought the right people on it. And many of you have done the right things to bring the right people into your teams, or you've chosen the right team because you believed in the person, but then your belief breaks down for some reason. And it's like, wait, if we hold that trust, then we're going to be able to complete the mission with success, and we're all going to land. Everybody's going to be safe. But it is really, this is, if you ever want to see high level trust, watching this video, it's like, oh yeah. Because when they're in that plane, he's just looking and doing this. Meanwhile, he's going hundreds of miles an hour this way.
Everything about it says that's not what you're supposed to do. But think about, Matt, how many teams we watch in businesses, growing businesses, that the vision isn't shared, the mission isn't shared back down the lines. And we've got all these employees of this company. We've got all these people that are working for us, and underneath this, you got a leader that's, again, looking straight ahead. They don't have the shared vision back to these guys. And we wonder why it breaks down. And on the same point, you got the people in the back going, where exactly are we going? What are we doing? John, what are we doing over here? Like, what are we supposed to be doing? Oh, we're just supposed to follow him and trust him? Like, where's he going? Like, I don't even know what we're doing here. Like that, I watched that breakdown happen so many times. And then finally, which you never see the lead pilot do, which is turn his head and look behind him to go like, hey, are you guys still here? Right. What we find is a lot of leaders, because the trust isn't set up, because the plan isn't set up, because the vision isn't there, they're constantly having to turn around going, are you guys still with me? And going, oh, why aren't they doing what they're supposed to be doing? Why aren't they where they're supposed to be at? Well, the whole structure wasn't set up properly. The teamwork wasn't set up properly. The vision wasn't set up properly, which I hate to say it, is a big part of not only the leader, but it's the people behind all working together to be as one single unit. And if the one behind you's got a question, you hope you have the person on your team to tap the leader on the shoulder and be like, I need clarification. I want to make sure that we're all working together.
Well, and having a feedback loop. So one of the things you see in this video too is the communication. So the lead pilot's not only there looking ahead, he's talking the most, right? Yep. And what I love about this too is they practice in, and I'm assuming they do this when they're in the plane too, is this kind of slow kind of communication too, so that people know like kind of how things are building up. And when you're making these moves in the air, you got to know what the trigger points are. But there's also points where then he's quiet and you listen to all the other team members check in as they've completed whatever thing that they're doing as well. And this is what we miss with a lot of teams. The leader will just talk things out to the team, but there's no opportunity for a feedback to make sure that, hey, yeah, the team's checking in saying, yeah, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. Some of the best brokerages and teams that we see, Garrett, are the ones where there's the weekly check-ins. Hey, let's take a look at these numbers. There is opportunities and structure built to create the feedback loop so that the teamwork is there. And the trust is there because we know when people are off track or that we need to make an adjustment, because there's those opportunities for the communication. And so if you don't have the communication structure set up, it is hard to have cohesive teamwork and trust in your team.
And sometimes, Matt, this is just a good CRM. Just, I mean, think about what we have for our CRM that like we can quickly see, okay, who are we calling? When did we call them last? What did we talk about last? Like I can easily jump into one of your people that you've had a recent conversation with that I want to follow up with. And I can be like, oh my gosh, last time you were talking to Matt, I noticed you guys were talking about, this, or I was talking to Matt and he shared that you guys had kids going off to college. Like, how's that going? Like having these processes so you can work as a really good team together. Like you need to have that feedback loop. And whether it's a CRM, whether it's a way that we text each other at the end of the day and just say, here's a breakdown of what we had going on. Here's how that meeting went. Here, we got to be able to do that. Because again, I watched that breakdown happen so much where there isn't that trust.
Yeah.
And then they're going, did they do it? Like, I don't even know. Did they go lock that house up? Did they go and turn all the lights off like I asked them to? Or am I just hoping? Because last time I hoped, I went over the next day and the lights were still on and the doors were unlocked. And I had to explain that to the homeowner. Like you've got to have these loops and you've got to have the trust.
We see it with transaction coordination. Like, oh, did that email go out? Was this person taken care of? Well, I'll just do it myself. Right.
Yep.
And it's like, then when you start intercepting your own teammate on things, it's like, all right, now we're just undermining the entire structure that we've been trying to build. And a lot of this, Garrett, is like, well, if we have a plan, if we know where we want to go, and I guess this gets into kind of our second point here of the visualization and focused and intentional, is having that ultimate vision. This is where we're going. And in this case with the Blue Angels, this is the pattern that we're doing today to wow this crowd. And then scaling that all the way down to, if you picture this, like, where did they recruit that pilot from? When did that pilot start to fly the plane, right? And all the way up until like now they're qualified to go through this visualization that they're there now. But this works in business too, because a lot of times, Garrett, we have the big vision, right? We're good at doing that. We have a whole even GPS business planning process that people can go into the 11 circle with a free trial and check out and everything. And we talk about in there too. Then you got to bring it back down. But this is the practice that a lot of us don't get into, myself included. I have challenges with this too, is can I just visualize what it's going to take to get to tomorrow?
Yep.
And build that vision and be excited about it. A lot of times we're not excited about these steps and we miss the opportunity to visualize in stacks to build up to the big one.
So let's talk about the visualization, because we got talking about this when we first watched this video. We were sharing about the power of visualization and how this works and how it can be so incredibly powerful. But at the same point, it's an interesting thing because you have to have some experience to go into deep visualization. You have to have seen some of it. Well, you have to have seen all of it before. Otherwise, your brain's making stuff up, which, by the way, it's great at. So you can like go, okay, I'm going to visualize myself flying a jet. I can come up with some of it because I've seen some videos. I kind of know where the hand, like the throttle must be over here. The stick to fly, it's right here. I kind of have an idea about it. But it's different if you've been sitting in the cockpit, if you've actually been flying the jet, to be able to go, okay, I've got all of this. I know what happens when I push the stick this way. I know what happens when this happens. I know what happens when I hit full throttle and how that feels on my body. You have to have some experiences. And I think that this is the power of, as you grow as in any business, in any industry that you're growing in, there's a reason that you start off in one spot and you work your way up. And you work your way up, and to some point that you might be a manager, and someday you might be, and someday you might go start your own business. And you're like, I know how all these parts work and how all this comes together. You have to have some of that to understand what all's going on, because otherwise the visualization's really hard. You can tell with these guys, they're not sitting there going like, I wish I was sitting in the cockpit right now because I would like kind of have an idea of where the throttle was. Cause like, I always forget, like they're not doing that.
No, and I think that's the repetition of this too. Like you can tell this isn't the first time they've done this. This isn't like, hey guys, let's try something today, right? And I'm going to bring this down to driving as an example, because if you think about like, well, how does a person learn how to drive a car, right? It's something that we all do and we're all proficient in. I mean, some better than others. Yep. South Carolinians maybe got to do a little bit more work or just stop looking at your phones. But when you're a kid, you're in that back seat for how long? Watching your parent drive the car. Then you're up in the front seat watching your parent drive the car. If any of you have driven manual transmissions or grew up with a parent who drives a manual transmission, all of a sudden, when you get in the driver's seat, sure, the first couple of times you're like, oh, now I'm starting to feel how the clutch works, but you kind of know what to do because you've watched it so many times. And Garrett, I think this is actually why repetitive visualization is really important today, because with the growth of digital content, right, and so much time being spent in front of a screen, our mind is fed a lot of different visuals and images that start to, I think, cloud out how we see the world and see our own next step. And so we start to believe some of these images that we're consuming instead of making the stuff up ourselves and just going off of the real world personal experiences that we've had, because none of us think about driving. Like no one's like getting into the car now and be like, okay, all right, hands on the steering wheel, 9 and 3. Okay, grab this, push the brake in, go into R. All right, got it in reverse. Okay, back out of the garage. Like, no, we got backup cameras and things. Like I back up out of my garage without even turning my head, right? Yeah. There's beeps and dings and all this stuff that we've gotten used to. And when you want to then go and do something incredible in your business or something, sometimes we forget like, oh, wait, if I just sit down and visualize and practice the mental rehearsal, what is that going to do? How am I going to scale that up? Because that's exactly what pilots do. And I've talked to some pilots and know a pilot instructor, and they talk a lot about like most of the time. I mean, you got to get your flight hours in, but there's lots of classroom time, lots of visualization. You see the Blue Angels in this video with a pen, like flying around the map and all of this stuff.
Not even that. Altitude. Did you notice they picked the pen off the paper to symbolize here we are at altitude now?
Which is like all the little details. And that's the power of like, okay, stacking this visualization up to then be able to sit there as a team and do it all together. It's really incredible to watch, Garrett.
Well, and so I started to think about like with the power of visualization and going into that with like, what are they focusing on? As like, is the number one focus, you said, wowing the crowd. I think that's a byproduct of it.
Sure.
Probably their number one focus is going home that night and being safe, like doing something that like we're going to visualize this in a way that we're going to be safe at the end of the day. So I think that's a huge part of like, what are we visualizing here? What are we doing is keeping us all safe, being able to be out there, doing something that very few people can do. but you've got to. I love the car analogy that you use. Well, for many reasons, and everybody knows that.
Everybody knows why.
But I mean, anybody who's listening to this for the most part that has a driver's license, I mean, I can sit here and say, sit in a chair, close your eyes, put your hands on the steering wheel, and I want you very quickly, set the turn signal so you can make a right-hand turn. Every single one of us is just sitting there going, oh, it's just this. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's not something that we're like, well, where is that? How do we do that? What is that about? Like if I was to say, I want you to turn the headlights on the car or the windshield wipers on the car. For the most of us, we know exactly where to go to find that in a car. Every once in a while, you'll be in a weird one where you're like, why would they do that? But for the most part, we can be driving in the dark in a car we're not even aware of, and we can probably find where those switches are if we really need them. And I think this is the power of the visualization and what we know and what we see. And then, you go into our business, Matt, and you go say, okay, so let's take a look at a listing presentation. Let's use the market impact reports that we talk about all the time that people should be doing every single week with their clients. They should be meeting at least 2 people a week and sitting down there like, I just can't do these. I just can't do that. I'm like, you got to go out and do at least one. Like get out there so you can see what it feels like, see what it's about. We can start to make changes. And when you start to find those pieces that work, this is where you can start doing a visualization and sit back and say, okay, I'm going to go today and do a market impact report. And let's start to think about what are the conversations that we're going to have? How am I going to show the information? Am I going to go through every single page or do I have a couple bullet points I'm going to hit? What is the point of complete success with having this? What is even the end point where your client's sitting across the table and they go, oh my gosh, Matt, thank you so much. I've never had a real estate agent as professional as you that showed up to give us that information. Like, thank you. You're always stepping above the rest. Throw that into the visualization of like, this is what success is looking like coming out of these things. How am I showing up to cause that as a result? That would be wowing the crowd at the end of the day.
Oh yeah. I love that idea too of getting so nuanced with it. It reminds me of a conversation I had with an agent the other day who was looking for, I just need to do this. I need this person to make these calls so that I can build my business. And I was like, wait, let's just step back for a second. Are you doing your market impact reports? Well, no. Okay. Well, why are we not? And I think this is, if we don't visualize, our brain is going to visualize something. It's going to bring in other unstructured visualizations of what could work, right? Because yes, a cold caller could work, right? This over here could work. And if our visualization mechanism is on its own, kind of accord, just trying to make up these ideas, it's going to be unstructured. And then when we go to take action, we're not prepared. And so if you are like, hey, I know these market impact reports work. When I sit down with a client and update them on the value of their home based on what are the market trends over the past year, like that leads to really strong relationships and good business. I just got to, if I can practice that over and over and over again in my head, practice it in action, and then I'm going to get really good at that, which is going to then step up. And this is the power of the incremental visualization, because most people are visualizing, well, this is what my business looks like over here. Well, let's visualize this component. And this is where in sports, this is very powerful, right? Yeah. And I'm sure the Blue Angels do this as well, as breaking down little segments, right? Because even when I ran track, there was a different level of visualization than when I was skiing. And skiing was like, okay, you got to visualize the whole run, but then we broke it up into chunks. And even with track, I was like, just visualize the start, getting out of those blocks, getting out of there. What do you want to look like? What do you want that the third party view to look like? Is your body down? Are you coming up really fast? Are you driving your knee in a certain way? How do you feel, right? Starting to bring the feeling into the visualization as well. Like, am I calm? Is my heart rate up? Am I prepared? Like going into a market impact report, do I have the confidence in the stats? Do I know the questions that could come up and I have the answers in my back pocket if they do? Or am I confused, right? Yeah. And if you're feeling confused in this visualization, we need to then come back to a lower level first to then build that next step. And I think that's something that we don't pay a lot of attention to, Garrett, is we just kind of just go and do without the visualization and without the practice.
I think it'd be important. And again, as you said, we always visualize the final outcome. We visualize what it means to be on the podium. Like, I'm going to be on the podium. Like, that's what we're looking at. But I think in your business, we're talking about, and this again, we talk a lot about real estate, but it's anybody's business. Anybody who's building anything out here right now, look at all the processes, and you break those down and be okay. Each one of these processes is something that I can do a visualization around, and we'll go back to the market impact reports. I talked about like going through every stage, but there you can break that one down into, you know what? I just want to visualize and do a really in-depth visualization of that first moment that I call somebody to do a market impact report and how that goes in perfect timing and sequence. What are the things I talk about? How do I engage them? What are questions I ask them first before I go, oh, I got something for you. We need to set an appointment. We're going to do a market impact report. Like maybe I shouldn't lead with that. What's a better way I can do this to get the results I want so that person goes, I would love to get together with you. I will make time for you this week. I'm so excited that you reached out to me. How can we set that first point up to get that first step? Maybe that's the incremental visualization we're having up front. Then we can do a whole nother visualization. That is when we meet with them face to face and how that starts. And then the goal is, like we watched with the Blue Angels, is now we're going to put all those together. We're going to piece all these things together. And then when you do all that stuff in sequence, you get the final outcome, which might be on the podium, might be wowing the crowd and going home safe at night. And it might be saying, oh my gosh, that was the best market impact report. That was the best phone call I've had with somebody in so long. What made the difference? Well, might have been how you prepared for it.
Well, and I love this, and we're going to get into the prepare side here too, but the visualization thing will build a habit as well, right? Because nobody, I mean, I don't know anybody, at least, I mean, if you tell me if you do this when you listen, like when you're getting ready to go, in your car to drive to work or take your kids to school, you're not sitting there and going, okay, let me just visualize putting the key in, which I guess you don't have to do anymore, push the button, whatever it is. Like you just get in the car and go because you've done it. But if you hadn't already mastered that, it's going to be hard to go to the next stage. So while the Blue Angels may not need to sit there and visualize how they get their planes turned on and how to take off, they have mastered that already, because if they hadn't, imagine the stress of trying to do the thing before you get to the real thing. Yeah. It's going to make the real thing a whole lot harder, which is why that incremental visualization and process is so important, because it prepares you to have the unconditioned response, unconditioned knowledge to be able to go and do the thing to get you to where you need to go, so that the market report's already prepared. I already am good at making the phone call. Now I'm ready to go into this meeting and make it a success, because the other stuff doesn't stress me out. I'm like, that's habit. I've done it. I've visualized it. I've mastered it.
My ADHD brain is still sitting here going like, I have 3 cars. You still put the key in the door to lock the door. We'll talk. We'll go back.
It's a whole other thing.
That's a whole other thing. Most people are like, you have to put the key in the. There's a keyhole in the door.
Wait, what key in the ignition? They still do that?
Okay, so trust in the process, Matt. Let's talk about trust in the process, because I think that there's a lot of I watch this with people that we coach that are growing, that they have this idea. They're like, I've seen this work for other people. I've heard people talk about it, but there's this little voice in the back of the head that is like, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to produce those results for me. Like the situation's a little bit different. And it's like, you don't have trust in the process. You don't have trust in when I do this, and this, and this, in this order, I get this result. And some of that, as we've talked about already, is having something to base it on, having something to be able to see that you can see how all these pieces go together. Because the minute you see how all the parts go together through incremental visualization, you can go, ooh, I get how the process works. I can see that. Part of that is having success in the whole thing. Part of that might be just having success in individual parts. And then when you can put them all together, your brain goes, I get it. I get how this is going. Whether you've done it all together in total seamlessness, or if you haven't put it together yet, your brain can go, I can see how this works, which gives you that trust, gives you that peace to go, I can do this. I can do it. Very similar. We just did an episode on Alex Hormozy and mindset. And Matt, you shared with me, you watched another podcast with him and he said something, and please share that. I know I'm putting you on the spot right now.
We had talked about in our episode with him, like Alex just has this belief. You could tell that if somebody else can do it, he knows he can do it. And he literally said this in another podcast that I was listening to. And he said to somebody, he's like, I just have this core belief that if somebody else can do it, I can too. And so, and he is a very operational person. And so he trusts, right? And that level of trust allows him to go and execute, which is incredible, right?
Yeah, because Matt literally texted me, like, he's like, oh, he goes, he just said it. He says, I believe. And I'm like, dude, that's a mindset. Okay, we're going back to others. Go watch that one if you want to hear that episode.
Well, what's cool about the trust in the process with relating it to the Blue Angels here is if one of them doesn't trust the process, and it's like, well, you know what? I know that I'm supposed to give it this much throttle, but I don't trust this system that we have. So I'm going to give it a little bit more, like death. Like, you know, that's what's on the other side of them not trusting the process. They got to trust each other for sure, but they got to trust also the entire plan that's been built out. And while in business, the downside of lack of trust is not death. And in some cases, it could still be a little bit of progress, but maybe not the progress that you wanted to see. And I've seen this in my own experience, Garrett. I know you've seen it for yourself. Many of you listening is like, yeah, once I committed, all of a sudden things started to work when I actually followed through. And trusting a process or a system is one, the outline that you've created, maybe the outline that you've learned, maybe it's, you know, advice from someone who you believe is doing. I did a coaching call with Dan Martell the other day, and I was asking him about meeting people and setting up meetups, and he's like, hey, do this. And I'm like, okay. And now I'm going to go do exactly that, because if I trust the process, like, well, he's gotten some pretty good results. I'm pretty sure this will work for me. If I try to tweak it or change it or say like, well, I want to do it this way, I may not see those results. And that is why trusting in your system is so important, Garrett. I mean, but we see a lot of people try to just attach on all these things and then they don't even really have a system. So it's hard to trust in it.
But think about it in a team, in an office, in a company, like the minute that trust level breaks down of the people that are around you, of the process that's been put in place, like it's over. Like the minute somebody goes, I don't see that as a working system for me anymore. We watch it in companies where they build it around a certain process and people go, I don't want to follow that anymore. And all of a sudden there's this breakdown in the whole thing moving forward. If you don't trust your teammate who's leading this thing, if you don't trust the owner of the company, it's like all of a sudden there's this breakdown in this. And a lot of that is the trust in the process, the trust in your team. I mean, some of these things we've already hit, but it's like that process and the trust in the process is so incredibly important. Because again, if you don't,
and you have to have a process.
You have to have
I think this is what's interesting. I see, Garrett, I see like we've seen top producing agents who have had success over the years all of a sudden go, I'm going to do something different. Right. Yeah. And you're like, why are you doing something different? And for a while, I didn't understand why they'd make the switch. And then it became clear. It's like, oh, they don't believe they have a process. They're just doing things and they've seen results, but there's no documentation. Yep. Like there isn't a step-by-step system. There's not a standard operating procedure that they're following. They're just doing things. So they don't even really know what the results are coming from. So when they feel that something's shifting, they're like, well, maybe I need to do something different over here. And so and it's not that they didn't trust their process, they didn't have one. And so if you're out there thinking like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know where my business is going, the first step is, do you have a system? Do you have a process? Start there so that you have something to trust.
So I'm thinking back to when I used to coach soccer, and anybody who's ever coached soccer or has watched their kids or they themselves have played at a high level of soccer, it's always funny when you're around people that are new to the game, and you see this a lot in younger coaching, because all the parents who have never been around soccer, or at least haven't touched the ball since they were 8, their entire mindset is move the ball up the field, shoot on the goal. You got it. We got it back. Now move the ball up the field, shoot on the goal. This is the number one point of the game. And the minute one of those players passes it back or passes it back to the goalie, you watch the new parents or anybody who doesn't really understand the process. They don't understand what's going on. What are you doing? What are you doing? They're yelling on the stage. It's like, oh my gosh, there's a process here. There's a system that they are doing. And what that does is when you pass it back, all the forwards move up from the other team. It opens up the backside of the field, and you can now work the ball back up the field, and you actually have a better chance of making a goal. This is the interesting thing about you need to understand what the process is. You need to understand what the game is that you're playing and how it works. But you also need to have the trust in the process in the leaders that are above you. Because like as the Blue Angels sit here, it's not all them just figuring this out. There are incredible coaches standing all around that room, even at that level. And they're watching them and they're watching every one of their actions. And I guaranteed they're pulling one of them off to the side afterwards and going, here's something I want you to be thinking about. I noticed you did this. You may not have noticed you did it, but we're not going to do that again. And here's why. There's a high level of trust in the process, and they also know they've got people around them that are going to help them make sure that process is going. And this is where I go back to the power of whatever team you've created. This is where a lot of breakdowns happen.
Well, and getting into sports or even like dance and music, you have choreographers, you have play creators, you have head coaches, you have offensive
Were you a dancer,
coaches,
Matt?
right? And they're dance.
You were a dancer, weren't you?
My girls dance.
I thought you danced. Okay, sorry, I took that.
I mean, when I was a kid, maybe in kindergarten, there might be a video of me tap dancing, but I mean, I was in kindergarten.
Oh my gosh, I need that.
I don't know where it is, but I know it exists somewhere. It's probably on a VHS. So we may not have the ability to play this anymore unless somebody has a VCR. All the Gen Zs are like, VHS, what's that? But you have these directors, right, who create these processes and systems, and you know that exists for the Blue Angels, and they all have their input, I'm sure. But you also have somebody who's creating the, hey, here's a flight plan, right? Yeah. And so trusting in those things, which is great. But then that comes to our next point, Garrett, which is preparing before you go, which is kind of encompassing a lot of this stuff together, because that's exactly what the Blue Angels are doing at a conference room table. Is they are preparing well before they get into the plane to take off and do this. And in business, we see a lot of people just get out there and wing it, even if they have a process, even if they have all these things. And then they're like, oh, wait, I forgot my open house signs.
One of my favorite sayings that I learned was don't ever practice on the client. And like that is one of those pieces that if you look at like from a Blue Angel standpoint, it's like, let's get out there and razzle dazzle, guys. We're going to get out there and we're going to make this. They're going to love us. Why? Because we have jets. Like, who else has jets? This is going to be great. Like they are not relying on that. There's the preparation before they go to take all this in to be like, how are we going to get the outcome that we want? Like when we look at like in the real estate world, so many times we're like, I've got a listing presentation today. Well, how are you preparing for it? Well, I've got a CMA, and I've got, this is a little packet of everything that I do. Okay, great. Well, you're somewhat prepared, but like, how really prepared are you? Like, what level have you gone through so that you are hopefully going to get the outcome that you want? And I think that this is something that very rarely is done, because once you have those packets of information to go, it's like, well, how much are you preparing for this new listing appointment that you're going on? Maybe you're 3 years into the business. Well, we're not really preparing hardly at all anymore. We just grab our packet, we grab this, and we're like, okay, guess I'm ready. And we're like, I can meet with you in 5 minutes. Like, where do you want to meet? There's a level of preparation that I think that as we grow, we get sloppy about. We don't take that time up front. We don't sit down and say, well, let's really figure out how we're going to get the outcomes that we want to get. And I don't think there's a point in your career you should ever stop preparing for the outcome that you want, getting to that level of saying, I know what works and I'm going to do this consistently over and over again. But, as we get busier and we get moving faster and, we get to a level of success where we're like, well, I don't need to be that much better to be able to, grow anymore. I've got there. I got great clients. And this is where we watch people that they build great friendships with people. And then all of a sudden it's like, when was the last time you actually practiced a listing presentation? Oh, I don't even do them anymore. Like, you don't set the standards with they're my friends. I don't want to bother them with that. It's like, all right, like now you're winging it. Now you're going to get out there. We're like, I know I can razzle dazzle them. They'll be fine. They'll be happy with it.
Well, you think about it from like a commercial airline perspective, right? Those pilots have a checklist that they go over every time before the plane even leaves the gate, right?
Yeah.
And every single time, no matter what, no matter how good they are at it, this is part of our preparation plan. Imagine if you're going on a listing appointment. It's like, hey, I just want to make sure I got my listing packet. I got my marketing booklet. Let me make sure this page is in there where I might want to talk to these people about. Do I have my notes? Let me just review my notes of the client, of the property, of the street. Did I look at the Google Street View so I know exactly what the house looks like before I roll up to it instead of like trying to look for the number? Like I actually know what the house looks like. These little elements of preparation that are just going to help you execute. Because if you trust the process, if you trust your team that they've put together the right stuff, if you have a team, maybe it's yourself. If you visualize the way you want it to go, now it's just confirming all that through the prep, right? And saying, okay, all the work that I've done, I'm going to make it worth something by preparing before I actually go embark on this. And it's going to set you up for incredible success, Garrett. And you've mentioned a lot of practice, which is, going to be how we pull all this together. But this preparation point, people miss it a lot, right? Oh. And we had an episode, I don't think on Life at 10 yet, and maybe it was our old podcast where we talked about, hey, what are the things that you do to get yourself amped up? That's part of it too. Just prepping yourself, getting your energy ready, getting your mood set, right? Making sure that like everything's aligned so that this can go. Because if you're an agent listening to this, we know how important getting listings are. Like that's a big part of the game. And so why not give it that level of preparation? Because literally, not only do you have somebody in front of you who needs your service and is looking for your guidance, but this is also potentially a 5-figure, or if you're big enough, a 6-figure potential check that could be coming your way.
Well, and so Matt, I think this goes back into, we're going to go into step number 5 now here. We're going to roll right into this one because we talk about practice and taking action so that we're reducing the point of failure to 0. Mm-hmm. And I think you talked about the pilot and the pilot that goes out and walks around the plane before it ever takes off, checks all these things, sits in the cockpit and goes through all the safety stuff. And I'm talking about a commercial airliner. Like they go through all these things because, okay, well, what is the point of failure? Are we willing to accept failure in this situation? No, we're not. You have maybe 200 lives on board this plane with you. Like we want to get them home safely to their families and their loved ones and their worlds that they've got. My job is to keep them safe for the next however many hours that I have their souls in my hands. So are we okay with the point of failure? I think it's interesting in our business where let's say we take a listing presentation. Do I want the listing? Yeah, I want the listing. Are we willing to accept failure of not getting it? Well, I hope I get it. Like, I hope. Like, I think I'm going to get it. I think I'm going to do, well, what would be a way that we could practice and set ourselves up for this, that maybe if the opportunity of getting that is up to me of I want to take it or I don't want to take it, but it's not up to them saying I want you or I don't want you. Like, what if I could create a process that was the final outcome, that I got to make the decision whether I wanted to take this listing or not whether I hope they're going to choose me. Like, let that be the point of the final outcome, because I think a lot of us look at it as I'm either going to get it or not. That's the failure point. And are you willing to accept that? And I think that this is the place of what are the risks around it. And in real estate, the risk is you may not get a listing. The risk is you may not work with that buyer. The risk is that they might go hire somebody else. And I think a lot of us, do we like that? No, we don't like it. It doesn't feel good at all. I just was on the phone with somebody who was just losing their mind because one of their people went and used another agent. It doesn't feel good at all. But I think it's important as we're going through this visualization, this practicing and going through and trusting the process and making sure that we're breaking this all down to a point of what does 0 failure, what does that opportunity of 0 failure look like? And I would look at it as it puts the power in my hand of making the decisions at the very end. That would be for me is where success would be in this.
Yeah, no doubt. And Nick Saban is famous for saying, we don't practice until we get it right. We practice until we can't get it wrong. And I saw this video on Instagram, which is a great reminder of this guy that does these crazy cliff jumps where he's like jumping and flipping and then landing in these small little things. And like somebody had commented and he highlighted of like, oh, that's just crazy, the risk that's associated with it. And he goes, here's the risk. And it goes, went to him practicing in a gym, all these different jumps. And he had this little like green line, lots of mats, lots of padding, very low risk of hurt or injury. And his like goal is to hit the green marker, right? And time after time after time, hitting the green marker again, move the green marker, hit it again. And it's just that incredible repetition of doing it the right way. It's not doing it wrong and learning from it, which is what we need to do in order to get to the right, and then doing it right over and over and over and over again. And I get it in listings and with buyers, like every client's different, but if you have your process just like locked in and you know what it is, then yeah, the environment's going to change. You're going to be able to better adapt to those environments. And yes, you're not going to win every single one. I get that because you're not the one making the full decisions. But for the Blue Angels, there is no getting it wrong, because getting it wrong even a little bit is terrible tragedy.
So I think it's interesting to kind of bring this into it also. So I was watching a video the other day and I brought this up to you, Matt, which was Neil deGrasse, I think is how you say his last name.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, yeah.
Yeah. He was talking, he was being interviewed and he was talking about his new phone that he had, and somebody made the comment and said like, I noticed you don't have a case on it. Like, whoa, like pretty risky, dude. Like you must be like, living life.
Can't believe you're carrying that $1,000 phone without a case.
And he made the comment, he says, well, when I first get a phone, and he started twirling it in his fingers and spinning it around, he goes, I want to make sure that I'm like one with this phone, because the option of dropping it is zero. Like that's not it's not an option. I don't want to have a case on to protect it for when I do drop it. Like the answer of dropping it's zero. And he brought this back to the military. Now, a lot of you have watched, shows and things like that where they're spinning their guns and they have the rifle and they're spinning it around. They got it flying around their hands. It's really impressive. Like when you watch them do it, you're like, whoa, like how are they doing that? And every once in a while there will be a mistake, but it's at an extreme level of them handling this weapon at this crazy speed, and Neil brings it up in the video where he said, I always wondered why. Like, what is the point of this? What is this? And it's a showcase of the control that they have with their weapon, because the answer is them dropping that gun is not an option. In battle, in using a handgun and using those weapons, the dropping it option isn't an option. It's not an option in any way, shape, or form. So they practice at this high level so that the chance of dropping it is zero. And I think that when we look at like this practice and how we go through all these things that we do in our business, how are we practicing? How are we doing it? How are we showing up so that the point of failure is zero? The dropping of that handgun is zero. For him, dropping his cell phone, I don't need to worry about it because I have practiced with it so much. I know how to handle it, and it's not going to hit the ground. I'm not doing it. We're not dropping it. To the point of the Blue Angels, going out there, failure is not an option. What does failure mean? You potentially are killing yourself, potentially killing one of your teammates, and any one of the amazing fans that was there to watch you perform, because this is what your job was there to do. The risk is hurting them. Is any of this an option? Absolutely not.
Incredible. I mean, like I love the rifle thing too, because, and I hope that you guys take away something from this of like, this doesn't mean you need to go and spend outrageous number of hours doing something to perfect, but it is building it into your process, because those outrageous number of hours will accumulate. And yes, sometimes you're just going to get thrown into it. And people say, well, the best way to learn is to get out there and do it. And yeah, I agree. Following somebody on, watching somebody, being in the field and seeing things happen, because that's the best way that you're going to learn. And yeah, getting some no's is going to be good for you. And luckily, we're all in an industry where the no's aren't life or death. It's just, didn't get that listing, didn't get this buyer. But take that stuff back and practice on it. and if you're a broker owner or a manager or a leader, I always thought when I was a manager, like I actually did this with new agents, we'd use our office as like a test house. And I'd be like, all right, show me this house. Right. And we'd go and we'd do a showing. All right, cool. This is my house. You're going to come in and we're going to walk the house and practice on a listing consultation. I'm like, do this with your agents, build the environment to practice, because then they get used to like what it's like walking around. Cause if you've never walking around and taken notes before, and now all of a sudden you have to go walk around, take notes and have a conversation, and you've never practiced it, you're not going to be focused. Right. 100%. And it's going to be hard. And then you're going to miss something, which might be crucial to you helping that person get to where they want to go and you getting that listing. So practice
to the point of failure is zero.
So Garrett, I want to pull this into just matching this practice in action with this visualization. And I think this is where like we pull this all together, and this is how it stacks up, right? Is you practice one thing, you practice until you can't get it wrong. And then you build in repetitive practice, like so that there's never a time where you're like, I'm going back to basics. It's just always there. And you visualize that step. And then as you master that visualization, now you get to move to the next one. Now, all the while, you're still keeping the big vision in mind too, and you're just building up to it. Practice, can't get it wrong, visualizing that next step. Practice, visualizing that next step. And then you go up and up and up. And then all of a sudden you're at the top, and you still have the habits from the bottom that are right there. And that's the beauty of pulling all this together, Garrett. And it's amazing that I think we were able to pull all of that out of a 4-minute video watching the Blue Angels.
It was so impressive though. And I hope everybody walked away, one, from this episode, but also if you got to watch that video, if you actually took the time to go sit down and watch it, especially before you listen to all of this, because I think it pulls it all together of being able to kind of visualize and see what we're talking about here. This is, it's an amazing thing to watch somebody who puts that amount of effort into getting it right and to getting it, perfect. And there's a reason those guys are at the level they are at, and they do what they do. And I think in any industry, in any role, in any business, you can watch somebody and go, man, they're operating at a really high level. And I will tell you, it's not by accident. It's not just because they got lucky. I've never really found anybody that I can think of that's just like, oh, that's just because luck is on their side and that's just how it works. You want to get predictable results like that over and over and over, and you've got to put the time in. You've got to visualize. You've got to know where you're going. You have trust in the people around you. And this is why this video clip resonated so much with Matt and I, and it's why we wanted to share it with you guys. So with this being said, Matt, thank you for this video.
Thank you as well. Like this has been a really fun episode for me. So, and it's actually been really good and cathartic for me too. So thank you. And thank you everybody for listening into this as well.
So, with that being said, if you want to follow more about what Matt and I are doing, there's a couple things you can do that will bring you into our world. One is you can go on YouTube. If you're not watching that already, subscribe to our channel. It's absolutely free. Just hit the subscribe button and it will just alert you when new stuff comes out. We have our podcast episodes. We also have other things that we put into there all the time that you will get little extra clips, extra sound bites, pieces along those lines that you might like. The other thing you can do is you can come join us in our community, and we have a couple different levels that you can come into. You can come and just be a part in there, and you can just go on to lifeat10tenths.com, and in there you can sign up for a membership, and very simple membership where you can get to all of our podcast episodes. You'll get announcements and things that are kind of going on in our world. You can learn about that. If you want to join our starter membership, it's $10 a month. It's actually $100 for the entire year. And you can sign up for that, and that will actually get you into our Monday mindsets. You'll get something every single day in there about keeping yourself focused and on point. I'm pulling out things of books that I read all the time and sharing quotes, sharing pages, passages. That's all in that starter membership there. And then if you want to step up and be a larger part of our community, we have an amazing group coaching program called the 11 Circle. We'd love to have you in there. That is growing fast right now, Matt. We have so many cool people. Every time somebody jumps into this and I get a chance to call them and kind of get a sense of who they are and where they're coming from, I'm so excited for the people that are coming into our world right now. And new faces, people I've never met before that have been listening for a long time and are now just starting to file in, and it's so cool. So I want to say, one, thank you for all of you that are moving towards us right now, because it's amazing. And the other thing is we'd love to have you be part of our world if you're thinking about joining. So with that being said, Matt, anything else that I've left on the table?
No, I think that's it. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I know this was a longer one, and I think it was worth it. And if you made it this far, I know that you got a lot out of it. So share it out to somebody who you know who needs this message as well, which is probably a lot of people, because Garrett and I need these messages, which is why we share them. And it's also because, like, hey, if this is working for us, we want to make sure it's working for somebody else too. So
this episode, as far as I can look at it, Matt, this is like, okay, yes, a lot of you listening out there are in the real estate mortgage industry. Yes, 100%. This video that we found and these things that we talked about, this is for students. This is for anybody who's a business owner, anybody who wants to be a professional in any aspect of their life. This is where this opportunity lies. And so if you want to share this with them, I would encourage you to do it. And easy to share through YouTube, easy to share through, Spotify or Apple, but yes, have at it, have fun with it. We'd love to hear your feedback on this because it was powerful for us. So Matt, thank you. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back soon.